Most of us think that hitting a dead end in life means, well, we've completely failed. You know that feeling, right?
Oh,
Like you're
absolutely.
navigating your career or whatever path you're on, and you feel like you finally, figured out the controls.
Right, you finally know how to play the game.
Exactly. And then suddenly, boom, you hit a massive cliff. The ground just drops out right from under you.
And the panic sets in immediately.
Oh, yeah. You just assume the game is broken. But what if, and this is wild to think about, what if 2,800 years of historical data actually proves that hitting that cliff is the only real way to find your ultimate purpose?
It's quite a claim.
It is. Welcome to today's deep dive. We are tackling a massive, honestly, pretty daunting question today, which is, what do you make of a life?
It really is the ultimate question, isn't it? And,
Yeah.
What makes our source material today so compelling is that it approaches this, well, not with vague inspirational philosophy, but with hard data. We're looking at excerpts from Jim Collins' book, What to Make of a Life. And this is the culmination of a massive 10-year research project.
10 years? That's a lot of digging.
Oh, definitely. A whole team systematically analyzed 34 remarkable individuals. They traced these lives to map out exactly how they navigated their own cliffs. Those life-altering, trajectory-breaking events.
Right, the stuff that derails you.
Exactly. And how they found their way out of what the book calls the fog of youth and confusion. We are talking about an aggregate of 2,809 years of lived experience.
I mean, over 2 millennia of human trial and error just to sift through. That is wild.
It's an incredible data set.
And looking at the list of these 34 people, I mean, there are Nobel winners, presidents, world champion athletes in here, but I think we need to set the record straight for anyone tuning in right now.
Yeah, good idea.
The goal of this deep dive isn't to hand over some, manual on how to become famous.
Exactly. That is such a vital distinction to make right up front. The subjects in this study, they were chosen simply because, as the researchers point out, that's where the data is.
Right, because they actually left a paper trail.
Precisely. If you want to study a human life from its earliest youth through the messy middle and all the way to the very end, you need a massive continuous record. You need letters, interviews, public records, contemporary accounts spanning decades.
You can't do that with just, a normal person who didn't save their emails.
Right, so these specific luminaries were selected out of sheer logistical necessity. The real treasure here isn't their fame or their status. It's the underlying universal patterns they use to find meaning and sustain their drive.
Patterns that basically anyone listening can apply to their own fog right now.
Exactly.
Which makes me think of like a video game map.
Well, I like that.
Yeah, where most of the screen is covered in that dark fog, right?
Yeah.
You don't know what's out there. We tend to panic when we hit a cliff or a dead end in that fog, but this research kind of proves that cliffs aren't the end of the game. They are the exact moments that force you to level up and find your actual path.
That's a perfect analogy.
Yeah.
But to survive a drop off one of those cliffs, the research argues you can't just wing it. You need to have already figured out what the Greeks called your hedgehog.
The hedgehog.
Yeah, it anchors this whole blueprint on an ancient parable.
Right, before we get into the specific lives, we really need to understand this blueprint. How does the parable go again?
It goes, the fox knows many things, but the hedgehog knows one big thing.
Okay.
So the fox has 100 complicated, clever strategies to attack, but the hedgehog just rolls into a spiky ball. It's one perfect, impenetrable defense.
Keep it simple.
Exactly. In the context of this study, finding your true path means entering what they call hedgehog mode. And that requires finding an arena of activity that passes 3 overlapping tests, or pillars.
Okay, let's break those down. What is the first pillar?
The first is that you must discover and deploy your encodings.
Encodings.
Right. Encodings are those durable, intrinsic capacities that you are just naturally wired for. They're unique to you, and they lie dormant within you, just waiting to be activated by experience.
Okay, wait, hold on. Let me just push back gently here.
Sure.
We are looking at Nobel Prize-winning scientists and Hall of Fame athletes. Let's be real for a second. Are we sure encodings isn't just a polite academic word for being a once-in-a-generation genius?
It is so easy to make that assumption.
I mean, it sounds like it.
It does, but the research vehemently pushes back on that idea. The point isn't that these historical figures possessed some mystical genius that the rest of us simply lack.
Okay.
The point is that everyone, including you, has a vast, spectacular constellation of encodings within them. way more than you could ever possibly use in a single lifetime.
Really?
Yeah? You don't create these encodings, you don't buy them, you discover them.
Mhm.
Every single person is a category of one.
A category of one. I like that.
Right. The individuals in this study just happen to be exceptionally good at trusting and playing to their specific idiosyncratic package of encodings rather than trying to copy someone else's.
Okay, can buy that. We all have unique internal wiring. So if pillar one is discovering those encodings, what are the other two tests to reach hedgehog mode?
The second pillar is flipping the arrow of money.
Nothing there.
Yeah, it's a profound psychological shift. You have to move away from the standard mindset of, I work in order to make money.
Which is what most of us do.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And instead, you adopt the inverted mindset of, I need money in order to do what I am encoded for. Money transitions from being the finish line to simply being the fuel.
Okay. Money is just the gas in the tank.
Exactly. And then the third pillar is focusing the inner fire. You have to find an unquenchable, almost childlike enthusiasm for the work itself.
Like you just love doing it.
Right? An intensity that, instead of burning you out, actually feeds your energy the more you do it. So when you lock those three pillars together, your intrinsic encodings, money as your fuel, and an inner fire, you have found your one big thing.
To really see what a perfect alignment of those three pillars looks like in the real world, we have to talk about Barbara McClintock.
Oh, she is the ultimate example of a single, deeply focused hedgehog.
Yeah, I know she was a pioneering geneticist, but I was reading the specific anecdotes from her early life in the research. It's hilarious and honestly kind of astonishing how she discovered her encodings, because her brain just worked in a completely unique way.
It really did.
Yeah.
There's a story from her college years that perfectly illustrates what an encoding actually looks like in practice.
Yeah, the geology exam.
Yes. So she was taking a geology exam. She got so rapidly absorbed in solving the questions, just so deeply entranced by the puzzle on the page, that she actually finished early.
Which is great.
Right, but when she went to turn the paper in, she realized she had forgotten to write her name at the top. And she literally could not remember it.
That is, forgetting your own name.
She just sat there in the exam room for 5 minutes, then 10, then 15. She was absolutely terrified the clock was going to run out, and she was way too embarrassed to just tap a classmate on the shoulder and ask, excuse me, who am I?
I would be mortified.
Exactly. It took her 20 full minutes of sitting there just to remember her own name.
That is incredible. That is just total immersive tunnel vision.
Yes, and that's the point. She didn't have to be taught how to focus. She was encoded to lose herself entirely in thought.
Wow.
The research actually describes her brain as an organic decryption machine. Later on, when she found her way into genetics, specifically studying maize, or corn, she discovered she had this surreal ability to mentally transport herself inside a cell.
Wait, like physically visualize being inside it?
Exactly. She described the process almost like walking around the interior of a house and making friends with a chromosome.
Making friends with chromosomes. It's like she had virtual reality built right into her mind.
She did.
But she didn't just sail smoothly to success, right? She hit a massive cliff.
A huge one.
She's in her 30s, working as an assistant professor at the University of Missouri. This is the early 1940s. And she just slams headfirst into the gender barriers of traditional academia at that time.
It was a rigid, unforgiving wall.
Yeah.
She quickly realized she had absolutely no chance of ever being promoted to a tenured position.
Just because she was a woman.
Yeah. But beyond the systemic sexism, she also realized the university environment itself was completely misaligned with her encodings.
No, so...
Well, she found lecture-style teaching totally draining. She despised the social politics and all the schmoozing of the faculty lounge. She was so desperate just to do her work in isolation that one Sunday, when she realized she forgot her keys, she actually climbed up the side of a building and squeezed through a window just to get to her lab.
Just to get to work, which, as the sources note, caused a huge scandal on campus.
Oh, huge.
So she looks at this academic path, realizes it's a dead end, and completely abandons it. She just walks away from the prestige of being a university professor.
And this is where she beautifully flips that arrow of money.
Right. She takes a position at Cold Spring Harbor Laboratory on Long Island.
Yeah. And it provided a lab, some fields to grow her maize, and a very modest salary. Money became purely the fuel to sustain her research, nothing more.
And it was there, working in her 50s, that she made a revolutionary discovery about jumping genes.
Right, these mobile genetic elements. She proved that DNA can actually move around and restructure itself.
But the scientific community didn't exactly throw her a parade, did they? Like, how do you keep going when your entire field is basically ghosting you?
That's where you rely on the third pillar,
Yeah.
the inner fire. The response to her discovery ranged from total incomprehension to outright ridicule.
They just didn't get it.
No. For decades, they essentially ignored her. One colleague even noted that she had crossed a desert alone and no one followed her.
Wow. Crossed a desert alone.
But the thing is, she didn't care. She was sustained purely by the joy of the work itself. She didn't need external validation.
So the desert years pass, decades, and finally the rest of the scientific world catches up to her genius, and at age 81 she is awarded the Nobel Prize.
And the way she reacted to winning is just legendary.
Oh, it's my favorite part. Because she refused to get a telephone. She hated being interrupted, obviously. The Nobel Committee couldn't even reach her.
They couldn't call her to tell her she won.
Right. She actually hears about it on the radio. And when colleagues finally track her down, she is just out on a morning stroll picking walnuts.
Just picking walnuts.
Yeah. They hold a press conference, and someone asks her what she plans to do with the prize money. When they tell her it's $190,000, she is totally befuddled.
She had no idea.
She literally says, "Oh, it is. I'll just have to get to one side and think about this." She lived in khakis, practically lived on jelly beans, and didn't change her lifestyle one bit.
She had everything she needed. The fire was inside.
I picture her like a deep-sea submersible.
Ooh, I like that.
You know, she didn't care what the weather was doing up on the surface. She didn't care about the storms of academic politics or the sunshine of fame and wealth. She just wanted to go as deep into the trench of genetics as humanly possible, and she was built to withstand the pressure down there.
That is a fantastic analogy. She
Yeah.
was the ultimate deep burrower. But, if we stop right there, it might give someone the false impression that to be a hedgehog, you have to be this introverted, solitary monk living in total isolation.
Right, like you have to eat jelly beans and avoid people.
Exactly. And that is where the study introduces her matched pair, Grace Hopper.
Okay, yes. Someone who proves that a single hedgehog doesn't have to be a solitary lone wolf.
Exactly. They were born just 4 years apart. They shared the exact same 3 pillars. They both deployed their encodings, flipped the money arrow, and fueled their inner fire. But they applied them in wildly different, almost opposite ways.
And Hopper's encoding showed up really early, too.
Oh, yeah. As a kid at a summer cottage, she was such an insatiable gadget geek that she went room to room and completely dismantled 7 alarm clocks.
7.
Just leaving piles of gears and springs everywhere, trying to figure out how the mechanics worked. Her mom eventually had to limit her to taking apart just 1 clock.
And then she grows up, earns a PhD in mathematics. But at age 36, she joins the Navy Reserve during World War II.
Right. And she gets assigned to Harvard, where she walks into a room and sees a Markite computer. It was this massive 51-foot-long electromechanical machine. She called it the prettiest gadget I ever saw.
She found her ultimate alarm clock.
Exactly. For Hopper, it was love at first sight. She was perfectly encoded to understand it. But just like McClintock, Hopper hit an academic cliff after the war.
Because Harvard wouldn't promote women.
Right, and her contract was up.
Mm.
But instead of burrowing inward into a solitary lab like McClintock did, Hopper expanded outward. She realized that the giant hardware machines weren't the real future. The software was.
Which was incredibly visionary at the time.
It was. Programming was incredibly inefficient back then, so she shifted into the corporate world and the military bureaucracy to build better tools.
And she became a relentless champion for standard programming languages like COBOL. But how she got things done is amazing. I was reading about her leadership style in the sources. Can you explain how she managed these massive projects when she didn't even have any real authority?
Yeah, she relied on what the research calls teams of altruistic pirates.
Altruistic pirates.
Yes. When she wanted to build the first compiler, she didn't have a budget. She didn't have corporate approval. So she just convinced other programmers to work on it on their own time, fueled entirely by her own inner fire.
Wow.
She actually kept a Jolly Roger pirate flag in her Pentagon office later in her career.
I love that visual.
She and her team would roam around in the middle of the night, scavenging furniture from other departments, basically operating on the logic of, well, it wasn't bolted down. She was a deeply collaborative force of nature.
And she was also an incredible teacher, which seems like the exact opposite of McClintock's encoding, who hated lecturing.
Precisely. Hopper had brilliant encodings for communication. She realized she had to explain abstract, highly technical computing concepts to admirals and corporate executives who had no idea what a computer even was.
Right.
So she used vivid physical analogies. To explain why a network of small computers was better than one giant mainframe, she would say, when a log is too big for an ox to move, you don't try to grow a bigger ox, you use two oxen.
That makes so much sense. My absolute favorite is how she explained nanoseconds.
Oh, the wires.
Yes, the wires. So she's trying to get people to understand computer processing speeds, right? So she cuts pieces of wire. She holds up a wire that is exactly 11.8 inches long and tells people this is the maximum distance electricity can travel in a nanosecond.
It's a brilliant visual.
And then, just for comparison, she pulls out this massive coil of wire that is nearly 1,000 feet long and says, this is a microsecond. She actually brought those wires onto Late Night with David Letterman when she was 79 years old, handing them out to the audience.
She was a natural performer.
And she stayed on active duty in the Navy until she was 79.
And today, there is literally a guided missile destroyer named after her, the USS Hopper.
So let's run a quick thought experiment for everyone listening. Imagine Grace Hopper gets invited to give a college commencement speech.
Okay.
She stands at the podium and tells the young graduates, go out there, build big teams, navigate corporate bureaucracies, join the military, go on late-night television, schmooze the system. Now imagine a young Barbara McClintock is sitting in that audience, and she takes that advice to heart.
Oh, it would be a disaster.
A total disaster. She would be miserable. She never would have found the focus to discover jumping genes.
And the reverse is equally true. If McClintock gave the speech, advising everyone to throw away their phones, refuse to work on committees, and lock themselves in a room alone for 30 years, a young Grace Hopper would have withered away.
Exactly.
This is such a vital takeaway from the research. Be incredibly wary of life advice, even when it comes from highly successful, well-meaning mentors. Their advice is almost always a reflection of their specific encodings, not yours. What works for the expansive pirate will destroy the deep-sea submersible.
That is so true. Be wary of other people's encodings. Okay, so Hopper and McClintock are what the research calls single hedgehogs. They found one specific field and they stayed in it for 50-plus years.
Right.
But what happens if your one big thing physically cannot last that long? What if it comes with a hard expiration date?
This brings us to the second major pattern in the research. It turns out there's a strict 50-50 split in the data between those single hedgehogs and what the study calls serial hedgehogs. Yeah. These are people who find one massive focus, hit a structural cliff, and then transition into a completely different second hedgehog. And the perfect example of this is Alan Page.
The football player.
Yes. A devastating defensive lineman for the Minnesota Vikings in the 1970s, part of the legendary Purple People Eaters.
Oh, yeah.
Talk about physical encodings. I mean, watching film of him is like watching a jaguar. He was big, sure, but his speed of processing and his physical quickness off the line were lethal. He played 238 games without missing a single one.
Which is unheard of.
And in 1971, he became the first defensive player in history to be named the NFL MVP.
But professional football is a massive cliff waiting to happen. I mean, the human body can only take so much. How did he prepare for that inevitable drop?
Well, the seeds for his next act had actually been planted long before he ever put on a Vikings jersey.
Yeah.
As a kid, he was fascinated by the monumental Supreme Court case, Brown v. Board of Education.
Really?
Yeah, and he was also completely enthralled by the television show Perry Mason, just watching how a defense attorney operated in the courtroom. So while he's dominating the NFL, he discovers this deep internal encoding that he described as an overly developed sense of injustice.
Wait, how does an overly developed sense of injustice manifest in the middle of a professional football game?
Well, there's this incredible story from a 1971 game against the Detroit Lions. Page is so impossibly fast off the snap that the referee flags him for being offside.
But he wasn't.
He wasn't. Page knows he wasn't offside. He was just that quick. He recognizes the sheer unfairness of the penalty. So he quietly tells the ref it was a bad call, and then he just systematically dismantles the Lions' offense for the rest of the game in quiet, focused fury.
Just absolutely destroys them.
Yeah, he throws the quarterback for multiple losses. He blocks a punt for safety. He completely weaponized that sense of unfairness.
So he takes that internal drive for justice and eventually points it off the field.
Exactly. He became deeply involved in the NFL Players Association, fighting against restrictive free agency rules, and eventually helped organize a 42-day player strike. He even wore a people not property shirt.
Wow.
And the research notes this impartially. Regardless of how anyone views labor disputes or unions, you can see this as a pure, unfiltered manifestation of Page's internal drive for justice.
Yeah.
It was his encodings demanding an outlet.
Which leads straight to his second hedgehog. Because at age 30, while he is still playing in the NFL and taking brutal hits on Sundays, he enrolls in law school.
Yes, he does.
He passes the bar, he retires from football at 36, hits that physical cliff, and fully commits to his second hedgehog, the law. By age 47, he is elected as a justice on the Minnesota Supreme Court.
It's an incredible pivot.
Yeah.
And when he is inducted into the Pro Football Hall of Fame, he and his wife use the ceremony as a platform to launch an education foundation.
But this is the fear anyone has when facing a massive career pivot, right? Like, how does someone make a change that extreme, going from an NFL MVP to a Supreme Court justice, without waking up one day and feeling like they've completely lost their identity?
Well, that is the magic of the serial hedgehog. Page didn't change who he was. He didn't lose his identity at all. He simply took his unique constellation of encodings, his intellect, his speed of processing, his deep demand for fairness, and he ported them over to a brand new platform.
Ah, I see.
The platform changed from a football stadium to a courtroom, but the internal machinery driving him remained exactly the same.
That is so freeing.
It is. In fact, his matched pair in the study, Carl Eller, who played right alongside him on that same defensive line, also navigated that post-NFL cliff to find a completely different second hedgehog. It proves there are multiple wildly different platforms you can use to deploy the exact same set of encodings.
So let's pull all of this together for everyone listening. If we synthesize these incredible lives, McClintock burrowing in her cornfields, Hopper expanding outward with her pirate flags, Page pivoting to his judge's robes, we see that a fulfilling life isn't about perfectly avoiding the cliffs or pretending the fog doesn't exist.
No, not at all.
It's about taking a really honest inventory of your own intrinsic encodings. It's about making sure you treat money as the fuel to do your work rather than the finish line. And it's about chasing the work that feeds your fire instead of burning it out. And if your path ends, if you hit a wall, you don't have to find just one thing forever.
You could be a serial hedgehog.
You can take your encodings to a whole new level.
I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over, a question that really builds on everything we've explored in the data today.
Okay, let's hear it.
If a massive, unexpected cliff appeared in your life tomorrow morning, if it completely wiped out your current career, your trajectory, or your platform, what untouched encodings in your internal constellation would you finally have the excuse to deploy? What is the one big thing you would focus your inner fire on if you were forced to start over today?
Wow. Think about that the next time you find yourself staring into the fog, wondering where the path went, because that cliff might just be the best thing that ever happened to you. Thank you so much for joining us for this conversation and for taking this deep dive into the sources with us today.